My name's Mike, and I'm an alcoholic. And I suppose I'll get the formalities out of the way. My sobriety date is April 17th, 2016. I've got a sponsor who has a sponsor, and so on. Have a couple of service commitments, and I'm currently sponsoring a couple guys. Thanks again, Brad, for asking me to do this. A couple years ago, just a little over a couple years ago, when I went to treatment, I was asked to read how it works at the treatment center, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack, like in front of the 15 people that were there. And the guy next to me, actually, it was his turn to read, the traditions or something, and he goes, I can't do it, and he couldn't do it, Anyway, he's still in my life today. He's sober today. He's a great guy. But, it really is a blessing to be here tonight, especially because I was just asked today, so I didn't have much time to really think about it. And that's what I was told by a guy who's been coming around for a long time is things that are worrying me or worrying him. What he does is the day he's got to do it is the day he starts worrying about it. And I thought to myself, well, that's just impossible, But actually, I started trying to practice that with some different things, and it kind of helps me through some really, fearful times in my life. It's getting better. But, I guess I'll just do it like the way you're supposed to, and I'll tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I grew up in New Jersey, and I was very blessed to be born into a family, a very loving family. My mother and father, they loved me and still love me with everything they got. I've learned a lot in life from them, but they really did the best they could. I'm the oldest of three boys, and we were rambunctious boys, and I was pretty much the ringleader for the rambunctiousness. And we drove my poor mother through hell. Even though there wasn't much active alcoholism in my, growing up as a kid, there was a lot of alcoholism present, in my family. And I'm not sure how exactly I became an alcoholic, when I became an alcoholic, or really, I don't really even care why I became an alcoholic, but I do know today 100% that's exactly what I am. And I thank God for a solution for that problem today. My father's an alcoholic, but he's been sober since before I was even born. My grandparents, except for my grandmother, all died from alcoholism on both sides of the family. My uncles are alcoholics, my aunts are alcoholics. Fortunately, most of the people in my family are in recovery now. Some are still currently drinking, So when they say, when they say that statistically, or genetically, it could be this thing could be passed down to you. That could be true. And for a long time, I blamed my family for my alcoholism and the way I was, instead of taking ownership for it and it was really just an excuse to keep on doing what I was doing. Anyway, my dad was sober, and it must have been a really exciting time in his life. He was probably, I guess he was sober around 9 years, something like that, when he had me. He's just bought a house, or he'd just been married, It must have been this great and wonderful time. We lived, the first house that we lived in was right on the Hudson River in Edgewater, New Jersey. You could walk out the front door and see the New York City skyline. And at one time, it was a nice neighborhood. But one of my earliest memories as a child was, it was right around Christmas time. It may have been, the night before Christmas. And it was quiet, and then all of a sudden there was this racket. And something was going on. I knew it wasn't good, but my dad runs out the house, and I see the Christmas lights coming off the house through the window. So somebody was stealing our Christmas lights. And my dad shot out the door, started chasing after him. And my mom's in the background like, Robert, come back, so that's, I had a great childhood, truly, and having two younger brothers, I wish I would have been a better role model for them, but I can't change the past, but I can change that today, I pray for both of my brothers and that they come back to AA and, become willing to make this, large change for the better. So we moved out of there. We moved out of Edgewater and we went to the suburbs, and I moved to Wayne, New Jersey, and we had this little stretch of woods behind the house. And to me, it was like, going from the city to this little plot of woods. It was like, the great West, or the wild, wild West out there. And I'd go. My mom would let me go play and just do whatever I wanted out there, and then I'd get the call around dinner time, she'd be like, hollering out my name, and that's when I knew it was time to come back. And, I would come back in, and I remember a story. I remember this clear as day, man. I remember coming in, and I was a little kid. I was probably about 4 years old, and I still remember this. And I come back in, and my mom asked me, she goes, Michael, how was your adventure? And I said, it was great. I saw a purple elephant, And my mom looked at me like, okay, that's great. But I was a liar, man. I was a liar, and I would visualize my lies, so I could remember them later, and I would believe my own lies. Like, you could not tell me that I was lying to you, or get me to understand, yeah, it is a lie, I would never admit it. And there were these other things too, like my, I get money for, birthdays, Christmases sometimes, or whatever, doing chores around the house. And once my mom asked me where all my money is, and my dad's like, he's burning a hole in his pocket, like I could never hold on. I always wanted more, my dad was sponsoring a guy, and they're sitting at the dinner table, and I come in from playing outside, and I grab a soda out of the fridge, and I chug it, and I put the soda down, and I go, ah. And my dad's friend goes, do you know Bill W? And, so like way before I even picked up a drink, I had the isms, and growing up, I did terrible in school, and it wasn't because I was, a dummy or anything like that. I just wasn't interested in what they were saying, what they were doing. I did like art class, and I loved gym, but I would just daydream and draw all day during class. So my grades didn't really start taking a hit because, in elementary school, it's all pretty simple, but as I started to get older, my grades started to fall off, and I started getting more attention by the people I didn't want to get attention from. I was getting attention from the principal with my behavior. I was getting attention from the, what do they call that? I forget the name of them, but there's people in the schools, guidance counselor. Yep. The guidance counselor. And like people, my mom and dad, and family, friends asking me, hey, you better wise up, things are going to this is your life. And I'm like, whatever my life, I'm going to be rich. Like, I'm going to walk into, I'm going to be walking down the streets of Manhattan, and some movie producer is just going to be like, I finally found you, and here you go, and I really kind of thought like just life, things were just going to kind of fall into my lap, but it didn't really work out that way. I was 12 years old when I started drinking and abusing substances, and as soon as I started doing that, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I've been missing. And right off the bat, I hit it hard. I was in my first rehab at 15, and I had been arrested multiple times. I'd been in juvenile detention, rehabs, not a detox yet, you know, but I had been in jail and always being sent away somewhere. Boarding schools, I was getting expelled from school. It was ridiculous, really. And in my mind, though, I thought, like, well, it's not my problem. Like, I'm not doing these things, though. It's really, like, it's the kid that ratted me out, that little snitch, you know. It's man, that cop was an asshole, you know. Like, it was all these other things, and I could never take, like, again, I just couldn't own my own insanity. And blaming my parents, everyone else. So going to rehab at 15, you know, I hadn't really been really physically addicted to anything, but there were people there that were, you know, at 15 years old. There were kids 13 years old, just totally strung out, you know. And you know, I'm really grateful for the youth treatment facility at Bethesda, because it brings me back to those days, and I can very much relate to what they're going through over there because of my past experience. And I look back at some of these guys and these girls, and I think, man, like, you know, that was me, and I didn't even realize, like, how young I was, the opportunity I had at that age. On a brighter note, one of my friends, he got sober at 16, and he is a professional photographer, and not just like some, you know, chump professional photographer. Like, he toured with Logic recently, you know, and he's like a real deal, like making big time bucks. Like, his life just took off, you know, and that's what I started to see as my life started going on. My friends, their lives are taking off. They're buying houses, they're starting careers, they're building their own businesses, and here I am, and I can't even get make a payment on a $200 credit card. Like, my parents are paying my cell phone bill. I got a girlfriend paying my cell phone bill. I'm freeloading off of everybody that I know, and my drinking just continued to progress. And I was the type of drinker that just chugged right out the bottle. It wasn't beer, it wasn't wine for me. I got a bottle and I chugged out. That's the first time I ever drank and got drunk. That's what I did. We were chugging right out the bottle till I passed out. I don't remember too much about that night. And in fact, I don't remember a lot about my drinking. And back when I was drinking, I kind of didn't want to admit they were blackouts. I would just call them brownouts. Like, I'd call them like, all right, I kind of remember somewhat. And I remember people would be telling me stories of what I did the night before or the weekend before. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, that was funny, you know, that was great, you know, that was, you know, oh man, I can't believe I did that. I don't know what I was thinking, but really I had no clue what they were talking about. So the blackout started a long time ago. And then I turned 18, and it was like 2 weeks after 18, I went to jail for 3 months. And while I was in jail, I just got this, you know, kind of F the world attitude, and I wanted to be a criminal. Like, I wanted to live that lifestyle. I wanted to do all those things those guys were talking about in there, and I couldn't wait to get out and do them. It wasn't like, oh man, I don't want to come back here. I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing and wind up back here. It was like, man, I'm ready to start hitting streets. And I did. I hit them really hard. I got into the club scene in New York City, and it started out just a Friday night, then it turned into Friday, Saturday night, then it turned to staying up all Friday night, all Saturday and Sunday I crashed, missed work, and because I'm sleeping for 24 hours. And then it turned into Tuesday, I'm going back out to the clubs, and then I realized, well, why am I going to these clubs? I may as well just do this in my room, So I started doing what I was doing in my room, and that's where my isolation. As a kid, though, I isolated, and I didn't really realize it, but I used to love playing with my Legos or playing with my He-Mans. If there was a large group of people, I'd kind of be like off doing something else. I don't know if I felt like really different or anything, but I just felt comfortable by myself. I wanted to be in that safety zone, not having to speak, to anybody. And so kind of forgot where I was, but it'll come back to me. So I got out of jail, and so basically I'm just going out all the time, and then that stopped, and I'm in my room isolating, and now I realize what the problem is, and my big problem in New Jersey is New Jersey. That's surely my problem. So I moved to the boondocks in New York State and the Catskill Mountains. I had an uncle out there, and my other uncle lived in New Jersey, and he was teaching me how to remodel bathrooms and do all kinds of craftsman stuff. And my other uncle in the Catskill Mountains, he does really cool stone veneering, artistic stonework, and I moved up there to be, to get away from the lifestyle I was living. I thought that geographical change was going to do it. Well, I wasn't able to get certain substances, but the liquor store was right down the street, and I would buy that Jack Daniels, and I would drink the whole thing, And I started drinking, and there's not the population of the town that I was living in was 254 people, something like that. And I remember showing up at the liquor store one day, and the lady goes, well, you drank all of it. Like, we got to reorder. Like, I didn't drink the whole stuff, but she's like, you drank all the Jack Daniels. Like, and so that's when I realized I got to start going to different liquor stores, So I drive 45, or it was actually more like 30 minutes to another town, to another liquor store to buy there, and then I'd go to a different liquor store. So, I know what I'm doing. Like I gotta just outmaneuver these obstacles, and so I can just drink the way I want to drink and not be bothered. So, I don't know. Time just kept on kind of flying by, and I was doing the same things, over and over again. People I worked with were telling me I stunk. That I started to look like a real hillbilly, I was just really not taking care of myself at all, letting it all go, and not really a care in the world other than going to work because I needed to make money, because I know I want to drink. And that's when my alcoholism started to really just kind of take a hold of me, and my life was just centered around drinking, and I could not wait to get off of work. And I'd fling that cap off the bottle so fast I didn't even care where the cap went. I just, in one motion, just let it fly off and just start chugging it, and get a little sense of relief, because I didn't really have, even though I had been to treatment and been in and out of AA countless times, I never really tried to work a program. I never took any of these, any of the steps really to heart. But now something started happening where, like, I started to shake because I was so anxious to get off of work. And the reason why I was shaking was because my blood sugar was low. But really it was, I'm starting to physically need this booze, and so I remember you know, it's like it's getting close. It's like 3:30, and it's starting to hit me. You know, this confusion starts taking over, trying to remember a measurement or divide it, multiply it, and all these, you know, fractions and stuff like start really confusing me, and just my performance at work started to take a nosedive, and it just, the ringer, like, it just started to squeeze in. The alcoholism started to really physically affect me. It had mentally affected me for a very long time at that point, but now it was physically, like, becoming a real problem. And then it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Then it was like by 10:30. And then it was first thing when I woke up, I'm shaking. And then I realized that if I take a few drinks, then I'm okay for a little bit. But then I got to take a few more drinks later. And then I realized, as some time went on, well, forget about work, you know. I'm just going to get drunk, you know. Like, and I don't even know if I meant to really get drunk like that. It just happened. If I started drinking, I just got hammered immediately. Within 10, 15 minutes, the way I was drinking, I was, you know, 3 sheets to the wind. Passing out, and had a bunch of different run-ins with the law when I was living in the Catskills, and DUI, and a lot of trouble with locals up there. And so then I decided I got to get out of here. I got to get out of Dodge. And I moved back home with my parents. And I'm in this state of full-on, full-blown alcoholism. And my parents, my dad's not drinking. My mom, she has a glass or two of wine, you know. She's not, you know, she doesn't have a problem with alcohol. And they told me there's no drinking, or else you're out of here. And so I started really hiding it, you know. And they knew I was drinking. It's really hard to, you know, if you're as drunk as I get, like, you just can't. But they just kind of, my dad, I think, may have realized, oh, he's just got to go through it. You know, we've done all we can. And my dad actually told a friend of mine once, I'm just trying to keep him alive. And that's why I allow this, is because I just don't want him to die. And at least if he lives with us, we know if he's alive or not. And I must be, I'm not a father, but I would imagine for any parent that could be one of the worst feelings, other than death itself, like, that you could go through. And it really didn't affect me. This is how twisted and selfish I was. I was just kind of like, you know, well, thanks, Dad. Thanks for giving me this alcoholism, you know. So now I finally, you know, I can't stop drinking, and I realized I got to go to detox. I had met a girl, and I don't even know why, I don't know how I manipulated her into being with me, but so we had been together for some time, and it was, you know, she was done with me, and I realized, okay, I really am an alcoholic, like, and I need to do something about it, but I can't stop drinking, so I'm going to go to detox. I was 28 years old, and that's the first time I went to detox. As I was about to leave there, they asked me, you know, do you want to follow up this treatment? Because if you go back home, you're just going to start drinking again. You're going to go right back to doing what you were doing. And I thought to myself, nah, no way. Like, I'm good now. Like, I kicked it. I'm done with the physical, you know, part of it. And I can just go right on back to doing whatever I want to do, the way I want to do it. And then they said, well, there's a halfway house in Florida, in Boca Raton, you could go to. You just got to pay, you know, a little bit of money to get down there and get a ticket. And I said, Florida? You know? And I was like, all right, I'll go to Florida, Boca, you know? So I go down there, and man, I just had not had enough yet. I had not fully seen how I'm just truly an alcoholic, and the only hope for a guy like me is through these steps, you know, and through, you know. So I get down there, and I'm going to 3 meetings a week. I maybe did it 90 and 90. I don't think so, though. I did ask for a sponsor, but I didn't really go through the steps with him. I didn't really call him. and I wasn't working a program, and it was a matter of actually I never even was really sober because I was taking over-the-counter sleep aids every night, and I wasn't taking like one or two. I was taking like 9 of them. I was taking like 10 of them, 6 of them, and until I got a buzz and then fell asleep. So I was catching an effect off those for sure, and I did that the whole time. So, but anyway, I started drinking again, and real quick, my life started to get right back to the same place. It took a little bit of time. It was a few months, but the shakes were back, the terror, the madness, the confusion, the just not even being able to be outside and not feel like it was coming down on me. It's like I know you guys know what I'm talking about because many of you have been there, where the physical terror hits you, and it's just like it's the worst feeling. But I wind up getting some friends. I had met some people through where I worked. There's a lot of recovery down there, a lot of AA, and there's some friends that I worked with were in AA and sober, and seeing me taking this path, and they just came to my apartment one night and they said, "You're going to detox," and I said, okay, I'll do it, but same thing, I went right back to doing. I went back to my little bungalow on the beach, and started drinking I think it was the day I got out of there, I was drinking, and now, I can't even do my job anymore at work, and I get fired, and the last of my money runs out, and I'm selling my surfboards, and I'm selling my stuff, and I'm down to nothing. I have absolutely no money now, and I'm in Florida, and I barely have any gas in my car, and I was screwed. There's a guy that I really trust and look up to, but he'll be like, you get to that point again where you're, and he says a bad word, but like that, I've been to that spot many times where it just feels like there's no way out, except for suicide. And suicide started to become a really tempting thing for me. It was something that I started to really take control of my thoughts, and I'd be driving down the street and see a big tree off the side of the road, and I'm like, well, there's a nice straightaway to that tree. I bet I could get up to speed. It's a solid tree, so I won't become paralyzed. Oh, this is a good bridge. That's a really low guardrail, Once I had put my head in a noose and started to let myself sink and pass out, and then stood back up, and it was a cowardly attempt to commit suicide, thank God. But I was really toying with the idea, it was really becoming like this is the only way out for a guy like me. And time went on, and in that same hopeless state, that just no hope and no will to live or to do much other than so I could get a little bit of money, no matter how I got it, so I could get a bottle. And then the booze just kind of stopped really getting me really to where I wanted to be. I was just sick 24/7, just sick, nauseous, and I wasn't getting drunk like I wanted to get drunk. And I was living with my parents again now to just kind of suck the life out of them. Is what I didn't want to be sucking the life out of them, but I was literally making my mother sick, my father sick, and then I started going back to AA, and I really wanted to get sober, and I just couldn't. I could not stop. I'd go to meetings, and I would go to the liquor store on the way home. And I remember a couple weeks before my sobriety date, I was and I was done. And there's no way I'm ever going to drink again. The things I've been through, surely there's just no way I'm going to drink again. Fast forward, after meetings, after not getting a sponsor, after not meetings daily, but meetings a couple times, it was a Friday, I had no money, and I was not gonna get drunk, and then it hit me like that. I wanna get drunk. Well, there were 2 bottles of wine in my parents' fridge, and my mother told me, if I drink those bottles of wine, you're out of here. Like, that's my wine. You don't drink that, and if you do, like, we are just done with you. So I kind of knew I had nothing, and, you know, they have a nice little condo, and I may as well not drink those, but I got to do something. So I searched through her medication. She had had cancer twice, and I found something. I found something that might do the trick. I dumped out a handful of them, and this is the last thing I remember doing. Now, I don't really know how that works, but that's just what my brain erased to, was this, you know. And for 3 days, I don't remember anything. Apparently, one of the first things I did was I went in that refrigerator, drank those 2 bottles of wine. And then I proceeded to find somebody's credit card, steal their credit card, and buy a bottle of vodka, and I just kept, I don't even really know, but my mom was like, Mike, you were a mess. Like, you were trying to eat a string cheese, and you couldn't even figure out, like, how to put it in your mouth. And so my parents realized, like, something's really wrong here with me. And so I had been on, like, a run. Apparently I was doing a lot of different things, but drinking really heavily, and then I got into a little bit of an accident right in front, like 100 feet from the driveway, the parking spot where I parked. I got into an accident. Thank God I didn't, hurt anybody on the road. And the cops came. They called an ambulance. The ambulance came. Apparently, my mom told me that when the cops came, they said you could either come with us or you could go with them, and pointed at the paramedic guys. And I was like, I'll go with them. So I went with them, and somehow I never got charged for DUI or any of these things. And the first thing I remember is I come into my blackout was I'm talking to this guy on the phone. I'm standing in my parents' guest bedroom, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I remember going like this, and I remember somebody telling me, hey, are you there? Are you there? You all right, Mike? You with me? And I'm like, yeah, I'm here. Of course I'm here, like, who's this? And he's like, okay, again, I'm Mark Christopher, and I'm a counselor at a treatment center in North Carolina, He's like, and I don't really remember much of that conversation, another brownout, and anyway, I got it accepted that if I could get down there, I could get into this treatment facility. And as I started coming to more and more, I just started to reflect on my life, and started to really see how, these problems were nobody else's problems. Nobody else was doing this to me. There was nobody else left to blame except for myself, and there might just be something to this 12-step program. I've seen so many guys throughout my life get sober, stay sober. My dad being one of them. I didn't see him get sober, but and he still has a service commitment and goes to meetings regularly, is active, with his friends in AA. And I thought, man, there might just be a shot for a guy like me if I do this thing, if I really give this my whole 100%. So I go to treatment, and I was shot out. My brain was not firing off on all cylinders. I was a mess. I was 270-something pounds. I had never really been a big guy, but I blew up that last couple of years. Last year of my drinking, I just did absolutely nothing but drinking and eating, and sitting in the room isolated, laying down really. So I was ready. I was ready to do whatever they asked me. And, you know, there's all the things you hear about, like, about the suggestions and what you should do. But, like, it came down to, for me at least, like, the guy, one of the counselors asked me, they said, Mike, this won't keep you sober, but last guy who I asked to do this, he's still sober today. And it's a year later. And I thought to myself immediately, oh, I don't even know what it is, but I'm doing it. And he said, fold the toilet paper in our bathrooms so they're in a triangle like at a hotel. And I did. I folded that toilet paper. And here I am, you know, like it was, I'm still sober today, you know. And, you know, it's just, it all comes down to the details with this for me and my sobriety. And this is not something I made up. This is what's been taught to me. And that kind of just, you know, I try to take that attitude and apply it with all my ways, you know. Like sobriety, my first 3 months were really weird. Again, I was shot. But as my brain started working again, as I started meeting people and friends, building these friendships, these awesome friendships I've never had in my life, you know, until now. Like, things started getting better. And around 9 months clean and sober, I had a commitment. I was just getting into sponsoring a guy, and then it was Thanksgiving, and I'm on my way back to the treatment center for this feast that they do, just to hang out. You know, we're going there, and man, that November day was the most beautiful day I'd ever seen in my life. It was like the sky was a new blue. It was like the fall foliage was a brighter orange and red. And I wanted to look next to me at the guy that was in the back seat of this old hoopty that we were driving in and be like, you see what's going on here? Like, am I the only one seeing this, or is this not the most beautiful day ever? And like, man, this thing just happened to me that day where I just got this complete sense of peace for the first time in my life. A joy unlike I've ever experienced, you know, that didn't come from something else. And, you know, it was just like a whole new ball game. My life just felt like it was really nice. It was a great feeling. And you know, it was funny because I'd hear people talking about, it's a pink cloud and all that, and you better have your pink parachute when you come off that pink cloud, because you're gonna F up, again, if you don't stay the course. So, naturally I caught a resentment against that guy, but thanks to this program, that's done and gone. And I really like that guy whenever I see him now, it's just nice to see him when I see him, and, but he really helped me with that, because somewhere around a year and a half sober, or a year and maybe 9 months sober, something like that, the pink cloud started to fade. And, the old Mike just started coming back. Like, my old behavior is just like the way I was before I ever started drinking and was that hopeless drunk. I was just now kind of just not at peace, every day. Even though every day is a good day, it started to get just not like it was. And I'm very grateful that I remained, friends and active in AA, and, friends with these guys that I really look up to. My sponsor, always talking with him, and really what it was I started to stop doing the simple things that I was taught in the beginning. I stopped waking up in the morning and meditating the way it teaches you in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I stopped doing some other things that were suggested to do. I stopped praying throughout the day when my character defects were cropping up. Instead, I was embracing this anger, and I was fighting negativity with negativity. And this still happens, like today, like even I, sometimes embrace the negativity, but it was starting to get to the point where I was driving myself nuts again. And I'm like, man, I got to make a change. So I did that, and I recommitted myself to my morning meditations, so I could align myself with, more with God's will. I can't say I've ever been directly in line with God's will, but I'm getting there. Like I'm close. Like I'm no saint. I'll just put it that way. But that's okay, because I don't think any of us are. This journey through recovery, it certainly has its ups, its downs, its plateaus. But I am so grateful that I have a relationship with a higher power today. And unfortunately, for a guy like me, it took all those things, the series of events for years and years and years of my alcoholism and all that stuff that had to happen for me to get to a place where I could become willing and open-minded enough to believe in a higher power, in God. And, I was the type who believed in science, not God, and now I believe that science is wonderful, but I think it's kind of silly to think that just two atoms out of nowhere collided and now there's this great big massive universe, like trillions of light years wide, so huge it's incomprehensible to us. Like we can't even comprehend how huge this thing is, and then something down to so small, like the way our body works and how I'm even talking to you guys right now. It's way bigger than I ever ever could have imagined, and so is AA. It is way bigger than I could have ever imagined. Truly grateful to have this relationship with God today, and a God of my understanding. And to me, he's simply just love, compassion, kindness, tolerance, and just things good, all things good. Well, thanks for listening to me, and that's all I got.
Thank you.